Coming up this week, Toyota hits the 200,000 unit sales mark for plug-in vehicles. A North Carolina bill wants to eliminate free public charging. Extreme E completes the doubleheader week in Sardinia, and more. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 113 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and interviews with industry experts. Before we get started with the news this week, I want to thank our podcast partner, Titan Auto and Tire, for their support. Titan has 3 locations in the greater Richmond, Virginia area that are qualified independent repair shops for EVs and hybrids, which makes them one of the only considerable alternatives to taking your EV to the dealership. I take my vehicles to Titan, and honestly, if you're local, you should take yours to them as well. For more information and to schedule an appointment for your vehicle, go to titanautotire.com. That's titanautotire.com. Starting us off this week is a report from CNN Business that, to the likes of you or me, probably seems pretty obvious. They say you're much more likely to buy an electric vehicle if you've ever had a ride in one. Go figure. They write, the percentage of Americans who say they would definitely buy an EV has more than tripled over the past 2 years, according to a new survey. That's a little less impressive than it seems at first glance. It went from 4% of Americans in 2020 to 14% in the latest Consumer Reports survey of attitudes towards electric vehicles. But the survey did provide a hint as to how the figure could keep growing. One of the biggest predictors of whether somebody had said that they would at least consider getting an electric car was simply whether they had had an experience with one in real life. Overall, 71% of respondents indicated at least some degree of interest in getting an electric vehicle, ranging from those who said they definitely would to 35% who said they just might consider getting one. 28% said they definitely would not purchase an electric car. And hey, not everybody is going to be interested, especially those who have zero desire to even try. Also, far more of those who said they would buy an electric vehicle had been a passenger in one, while very few of those who said they would not consider an EV had ever ridden in one. Overall, though, the great majority of Americans, 83% according to the survey, have still never ridden in, let alone driven, an electric vehicle. Yikes. This is one area that needs so much attention. We need more ride and drive events. If you have an EV, consider asking your friends if they want to ride, or if you feel comfortable with it, of course, letting them drive your car just around the block, just to give them that little taste. Now, rising gas prices may also have been a factor of increasing interest in electric vehicles. The last time the survey was conducted in 2020, gas cost only $2.50 a gallon on average, according to the EIA. This new survey was conducted with 8,000 respondents between late January and late February of this year. Gas prices were still rising, but they hadn't hit their peak. They were only at around $3.60 a gallon on average. Today, of course, gas prices are well over $4 and in some places $5 a gallon on average for all grades. So maybe that's part of it, but I think if somebody takes a ride or drives an EV, that is probably the biggest contributing factor to whether somebody is interested or would consider buying an EV in the future. Next, it's official. Toyota, the company that has been very public about their disdain for electric vehicles, has sold more than 200,000 of them here in the U.S. Well, okay, in all fairness, that 200,000 also includes plug-in hybrids, which Toyota is easily a leader. Toyota has recently reached the milestone of delivering 200,000 new plug-in vehicles in the U.S., which means that the phase-out of the federal tax credit incentive will now begin. Oh yes, that funky rule for the tax credit that Tesla and GM have already hit. That one. According to data from Inside EVs, between February of 2012 and June 30th of 2022, Toyota delivered 205,785 plug-in EVs, which does include the Prius plug-in, Prius Prime, RAV4 Prime, a small number of RAV4 EVs, and 232 units of the new BZ4X all-electric SUV. By the end of Q1 of this year, the number was 197,866, so that clearly suggests that that 200,000 vehicle number was hit in Q2. On top of that, a small number of Lexus plug-in cars was counted as far as we know together with Toyota's brand. However, regardless of Lexus volume, it doesn't change that the fact that the limit was reached in Q2. So what this means is that the full tax credit of $7,500 will be available for all new Toyota and Lexus EVs through the end of Q3, and then cut in half for the 2 quarters after that, halved again for 2 quarters after that, and then finally being eliminated. So we haven't heard an official IRS announcement to support the phase-out schedule for Toyota. However, it does look like at this point that October 1st of 2023 is the date that Toyota will be in the same position that Tesla and GM are in today. No tax credit available at that point. And of course, this is assuming that there are no changes to the tax credit or incentives for electric vehicles between now and then. And unsurprisingly, Toyota, joining a few other manufacturers, have been lobbying to extend tax credits, lifting the cap of 200,000 cars counted separately, and setting a general sunset date for the entire market. A general incentive actually shouldn't have been implemented right from the start because the current system does not promote the companies that started early to build the market. It already has, of course, 2 of the largest domestic players, Tesla and GM, no longer eligible for the incentive, and that has been going on for a few years now. The different issue is that the incentive is a tax credit rather than a rebate at the point of sale. So if you don't have a tax liability equal to that $7,500, then it really isn't going to make that much of a difference to you. So you could argue that the people that have to pay the most amount of taxes are the ones that benefit the most, aka the rich who probably don't need the tax credit to begin with. There are other ideas for increasing the amount of union-made EVs. Of course, this is criticized by many manufacturers, including Toyota, Volkswagen, and Tesla, who are not very strong on the union side of things here in the U.S. Another proposal has been that it's only offered for EVs built in the U.S., but of course, Canada and Mexico and the trade agreement between the 3 countries, them and us, that causes some problems between those countries. So it doesn't seem like there's really a great answer out there, at least from the politicians, but I don't have a lot of faith that they can ever do anything well anyway. So the future is uncertain, but it looks like Toyota will be joining Tesla and GM in fighting against all of the other manufacturers who haven't adopted EVs as quickly. Next, Ford's CEO Jim Farley expects the auto industry's ongoing transition to EVs to force major consolidation among automakers and suppliers in the years ahead. Farley said that the massive amounts of capital needed to invest in the technologies will force smaller companies to be acquired and put pressure on new EV startups that are already running into trouble as funding dries up. He said there will be more acquisitions compared with the partnerships or joint ventures that are more common today. Legacy automakers and suppliers, he said, quote, absolutely will get consolidated, end quote. Farley said that the market that EV startups are going after isn't big enough to justify the capital that they're spending or the valuations. And he does expect that Chinese companies will gain an edge over U.S. players. He said, quote, there's a shakeout coming, and I feel like that shakeout is going to favor many of the Chinese new players, end quote. He said without naming any particular startups. High-profile EV players in China include NIO, XPeng, and Li Auto. I'm surprised that this article didn't mention BYD as well, because they are a major player, but I don't know. Not every reporter can get everything right. Let's see. Farley did cite China's top-selling Huanggang Mini EV, which is produced through a joint venture between General Motors and Chinese SAIC and Wuling, as an example of a vehicle that doesn't cost a lot to build but is popular with consumers. To make EVs more affordable while staying profitable, Ford and other traditional automakers will need to cut down on costs. Farley said Ford estimates that Tesla's direct-to-consumer sales model costs $2,000 less per car than what Ford spends on selling through its franchised dealers. Farley has been a supporter of customers ordering new cars and trucks directly from the company rather than picking one off of a dealer's lot. Farley, a former chief marketing officer, also criticized the amount of money Ford spends on marketing. In a nod to Tesla's strategy, he said he's not convinced traditional marketing is necessary if Ford is running its EV business properly. That money could be better spent on incentives and vehicle updates to retain customers, he said. As an example, he cited a birthday for EVs that would include a detail of the vehicle and other checks. He said, quote, "We should be doing stuff like that instead of our Super Bowl ads. If you ever see Ford Motor Company doing a Super Bowl ad on our electric vehicles, sell the stock," end quote. The comments come after automakers, including GM, Nissan, and EV startup Polestar, have run Super Bowl ads featuring electric vehicles that actually impacted the entire industry, with sales and interest in Tesla going up as a result. In this day and age where there seem to be doors opening for more and more EV startups, the question becomes, will we see a massive amount of failure or consolidation, as Mr. Farley expects? Will we see the big players buying up the new kids on the block? It will be interesting to see how this plays out in the coming years. Okay, moving on. I think most people probably agree that politicians are often sticking their noses into business where they don't belong, trying to control things that should be left alone, and generally proposing some of the most moronic legislation only in the best interest of their lobbyists, and ignoring what would be actually in the best benefit of the people that vote them into office. Well, this story coming out of North Carolina has to take the cake. A bill currently in the works in the North Carolina legislature would allocate $50,000 to get rid of free public EV chargers unless free gas pumps are built alongside them. That's right. The proposal is to spend money to eliminate free charging unless free gas is also offered. Sounds like the whining of a snotty-faced, annoying child, but no, in this case, the whining is seemingly of Keith Kidwell, North Carolina State House Representative in District 79, who has sponsored House Bill 1069, which would allocate $50,000 to destroy these harmful charging stations, doling out free electricity to EV drivers. How dare they? Let's take a closer look at the bill, which is divided into 5 main sections. Section 1 says, any person who is engaged in a business where electric vehicle charging stations are provided for use by the public at no charge shall ensure that each customer of the business, without regard to whether the customer uses the charging stations, is informed of, on the receipt for purchases, the percentage of the amount of the customer's total purchase price that is a result of the business providing electric vehicle charging stations at no charge. Okay. So they want to know how much the charging is actually costing each customer, even though it's free to EV drivers. A business, in order to do this, would need to know a few things. First, how much electricity the chargers are using, which of course would be known. How many customers are seen in the business, which also would be known. How much money those customers have to spend. And then you would have to figure out a way to divide the electrical usage by the total amount of money that the customers have spent, divide it up, and then somehow put that on the receipt when they make a purchase. I don't see how this is even possible to do in real time. I mean, maybe retroactively with a report, but certainly I don't see how it's even possible. And so then if a business doesn't do that, then that's where that $50,000 comes in to eliminate, destroy, remove the free chargers. And we'll get more to that section here in a bit. Section 2 says, except as provided in GS 135-18.02, which I'm assuming is another bill, the Department of Transportation shall not use funds for providing electric vehicle charging stations on property owned or leased by the state, or to fund or install electric vehicle charging stations on property owned or leased by a person or entity unless the department or the person or entity provides gasoline and diesel fuel for motor vehicles through a pump to the public at no charge. So this is basically saying they don't want public money from the Department of Transportation going to offer free charging stations, whether that's on public property or private property. They just don't want public money being used for that. And this I have a little bit less of an issue with because, of course, politicians do have a say in how public money is spent. So if they don't want public money spent on something, then that's entirely fine. And then voters can decide whether they want to keep the politicians or not. So, I'll let that slide, as stupid as it may be. It's a little less ridiculous than the first section, which is trying to tell private business owners how to operate their businesses. Section 3 says a county shall not use public funds to provide electric vehicle charging stations, yada, 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 same as the last section. Same kind of thing, talking about public money and how it's spent. Stupid, but not entirely unreasonable, but really stupid. Did I mention it's stupid? Section 4, a city should not use private funds, yada, 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 same thing, unless it's providing free gasoline or diesel for motor vehicles at no charge. And Section 5, the fund section. There is appropriated from the general fund to the Department of Transportation the sum of $50,000 in non-reoccurring funds for the 2022-23 fiscal year for the purpose of removing any electric vehicle charging stations that do not comply with the provisions of this act. The Department of Transportation shall develop a process for the administration and distribution of these funds. Oh, free EV charging is such a threat that they want to throw public money at destroying charging stations that they don't want public money to be spent on. I think my opinion is quite obvious, but I really, really want to hear from you, especially if you support this bill. If you think this bill is good and doing the work of the people, then please reach out. Email me at hello@ev-resource.com or leave your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. I promise I'll do my very best to keep an open mind. Next, Rosberg X Racing claimed a record-extending 5th Extreme E victory in the second of the 2 Island X Prix doubleheader for Sardinia this week, extending their utter domination of the new series that started last year. The team of Johan Kristoffersen and Michaela Island-Kalinski faced a tense battle with Abt Cupra's Nasir Al-Attiyah and Jutta Kleinschmidt in the final, a battle that was ultimately needless after the latter got disqualified for a safety infringement. The Cupra entry, driven by Al-Attiyah at first, made the best start, cutting off Andretti United's Timmy Hansen off the start. RXR's Kristoffersen tucked into second after initially taking an alternate line down the middle along with X44's Sebastian Loeb, which grabbed third. Abt Cupra pulled out right away and held a 1.5 second lead by the 10th waypoint, and by the mid-race driver switch, held a 5.5 second advantage. The switch, however, was where Abt Cupra's day would fall apart, with Kleinschmidt leaving the pits with one of her safety belts not properly secured. Gotta buckle up, kids. Nevertheless, she initially maintained first, but then Alan Kalinski was hounding her, and at the waypoint 10 water splash, Alan Kalinski forced her way up the inside for the lead, and from there, she never looked back. Abt Cupra's second-place finish proved to be of little reference, with the team being scratched from the result almost immediately after the conclusion of the race. That gave second to X44's Loeb and Cristina Gutierrez, who had managed to close right up behind Kleinschmidt by the end of the race and was scored 8.227 seconds behind the race winners. Andretti United's Hansen and Katie Munnings took third as a result of the disqualification from Abt Cupra, while Acciona Sight's Carlos Sainz and Leia Sanz were qualified fourth despite failing to finish, Sainz pulling off the course at waypoint 19 on the first lap with a mechanical issue. It was a very exciting doubleheader week for the series after rolls and collisions and things breaking, and honestly, the first of the races seeing a win from Chip Ganassi Racing, which, if you were following along last year, the bad luck that team got, I mean, it was very, very cool to see them go from seemingly no chance at all in the first part of the doubleheader. They were in the crazy race, won that, went on to the final, won the final after RXR was given a penalty. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It was awesome. So the final results for the championship are currently showing RXR in first place with 80 points. Because of the win on part 1 of the Island X Prix, Chip Ganassi Racing is now in second with 43 points, which, I mean, it's nearly half of the leaders, and the others are close behind them. X44 in third with 41, Acciona Sights with 40 points. I mean, it could go anybody's way at that point. Excite Energy has 27 points, and they're tied with Andretti United. McLaren, in their first season with the series, are holding 19 points ahead of JBXE with 18, and Veloce Racing and Apt Cupra with 7 and 6 points, respectively. So rounds 1 in Saudi Arabia and then 2 and 3 with Sardinia now completed. The next race, round 4, will be taking place in Antofagasta, Chile in late September. So if you want to catch the video recap of all the excitement, you can find that on the Extreme E YouTube channel. Okay, so that is it for this week's news. I don't have much of an update from the announcements last episode. The Spark EV is still at the dealership. The Tesla is still needing to get finished. The bodywork's done. We just need to get the wrap put back on. And I still have the Polestar, so that's exciting. I'm going to be shooting some more video. I have started editing the 70-mile-an-hour range test, so I hope to finish that today. Obviously, this podcast was a priority. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters, led by Rajeev Narayan at the executive producer tier. And regarding Patreon, some exciting news. The first EV Resource Patreon water cooler chat, maybe I'll have to come up with a shorter name for that. The water cooler chat will be taking place on July 23rd. So if you are a Patreon supporter, I have posted the invite details there. If you want to join the fun and you aren't currently supporting EV Resource on Patreon, then I would suggest it because it's only going to get better. I mean, it's pretty good so far. Tiers start at just $5 a month, which honestly is hardly anything for you. It adds up, so it makes a huge difference on my end, and I appreciate every single contribution from everybody. But in addition to that monthly chat, by becoming a Patreon supporter, you'll also get ad-free episodes, get your name read out on the podcast either weekly, like Rajeev gets his name weekly because he's at the executive producer tier, Charles Hall, monthly. Of course, I just mentioned his name again, so there you go. Maybe more than monthly, but $5 tier monthly. I mean, I'm trying to come up with more and more benefits for you guys in exchange for that support. So look forward to that water cooler chat. It's going to be a Zoom call. We're all going to get together and just talk EVs and whatever else comes up, and I think that will be a lot of fun. If you enjoy the podcast, the only thing I really ask is that you share it with your friends or anyone else interested in electric vehicles. I do believe that there's a decent amount of value to this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening. So why not share it with somebody else? And then if you can, leave a review on especially Apple Podcasts. Just let people know what you think. If you want to listen to any of the previous shows, you can find them on the webpage under the podcast section and on many of the major podcast platforms. And if you want more EV resource content, then I encourage you to check out the YouTube channel as well. Subscribe, hit the bell icon, sign up for notifications for uploads. And if you want something more to read, you can also sign up on the webpage for the monthly magazine. I am currently working on July, so hopefully by the end of this month I'll finish that. I apologize for being somewhat late. There's just so much going on. I actually have, 13 videos waiting to be edited and put out there in addition to the magazine. And of course, trying to do the podcast weekly. I guess I should say, if you are willing to volunteer to help, however that might be, let me know, because I think things have gotten so busy, I am running into the limits of what my time will allow. And on that note, I'm going to end things because your time is valuable as well. So thank you so much for being with me this week, and I'll catch you all next time.